Hey everybody, I am Haley Gray and I've got tonight's guest with me. This is Jillian Totman and it is Monday night, so we're doing an Ask Haley and interview session. So welcome, Jillian. I am so glad you agreed to be here with me tonight. This is really exciting.
Well, this is exciting for me, and I'm actually very grateful for you for offering or asking me to be on the show, or allowing me to be on the show, I should say. And I have a very burning question to ask you, something that I have struggled with, and I think that our firm has struggled with, and just looking forward to hearing your answer for that.
Okay, cool. So why don't we back up just a second and have you tell people what your business is and what your firm is and what you do.
So my husband and I own a law firm in North Carolina. We have 2 physical offices and serve everybody across the state. We do business law and estate planning, business planning, succession planning, mergers, acquisitions, employment law, anything you can think of. If you're a business, anything you can think of, we handle under our shop. And we have something that is very particular to us. A lot of law firms are billed by the hour, by the 10th of an hour. But what we like to do is on a flat rate basis. So when we do a document for you and we have a relationship with you, you're not thinking, oh, if I pick up the phone and call my lawyer, it's going to, how much is that going to cost me?
That's going to be 200. Yeah. 1/10 of an hour. Okay. So I'm minimally at $50 just for picking up the phone.
Absolutely. So we like to include that in one transactional fee. Business owners like to plan. Entrepreneurs like to be able to set their budget. So we've been doing this long enough where we can look at what you bring us and we quote you a fee. And as long as it's under that scope, it's included within that rate. And so that way we can give you the best product possible. So we like to put relationship over the transaction.
That's pretty cool. Whereabouts in North Carolina are you?
So our 2 physical locations are in Charlotte and Raleigh, but we travel all over. We go to Wilmington, we go to Asheville, we go to Greensboro. We've been all over the place.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I live just outside of Raleigh. So cool. Small world.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you said you have a burning question. So let's dig in and see what we can come up with.
Okay. So this is something that I have always wondered. When you're in and do the kind of work that we do, when you see on these morning shows and things like that, they'll bring on experts sometimes, and they'll say, they'll bring on somebody for commentary. So how do you go about even getting in the running for something like that?
Cool. Yeah, I actually did something somewhat similar to that in a previous business. I owned a home care agency, and we also did senior placement and helping families find assisted living, independent living. And we actually started a radio show through one of the big radio stations here in Raleigh. And what's really interesting is that what I found through that process, getting selected to do more stuff, was really a question of who you knew. And getting to know the reporters, getting to know the powers that be, getting to build that relationship. Those types of things will get you on there. And one of the things that I also learned is that sometimes some of those segments are a pay-to-play type of environment, where you can, approach them and have them interview you. Depends on, your PR specialist, that kind of a thing. But like that, becoming a specialist on there, sometimes it's a pay-to-play environment. Sometimes it is who getting in to know the right people at the right time in the right place and building those relationships over time. One of my dear friends, Nicole Clagett, does a segment on seniors and senior care here in the Triangle area. And that actually came out of her experience of doing a podcast on one of our NPR stations. And then she was a co-host of mine on the radio show that I did. So because of her experience with doing that, that eventually led to her doing the WRAL segments that she does now. And it was really that, okay, so you're doing something little bitty over here, and then you get noticed and you talk to people and you build those relationships, and then you maybe jump sideways and you go over here and build those relationships and jump sideways and go over there.
So then would you recommend for something like that? Would you recommend, we've toyed with the idea of starting our own podcast and trying to get published on, not just starting our own podcast and we would start with having it posted on the website, but then, talking to some of the publishers about trying to actually get, I'm blanking right now on the different.
On like iTunes and Spotify and stuff.
Right.
And iHeartRadio.
Absolutely. iHeartRadio was the one that was thrown out to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then trying to build relationships, or do you recommend building the relationships, or do you just recommend for somebody who is in a profession my gut feeling is it's going to be a combination of all of the above. The third option would be just hiring a PR person who already has those relationships to introduce you. But my question is like chicken and egg. So what comes first? Should you try to start building credibility and having like a book of things for people to look at and then going to hire your PR person? Or, so what, like without giving the whole recipe away?
Right. Well, and I would say that there's probably not a recipe, which is kind of the good and the bad of it, right? So these days, numbers count. So your numbers on your social media, the number of followers, the number of reach is going to impact your ability to get onto certain shows and get interviewed, because they're going to want to know what your reach is. So it may behoove you to be focusing on your business page and the number of followers you have and the number of people on your email list. Mm. So that's kind of one step. There's a really good book by Brendan Kane on getting 1 million followers. Some of it's really easy. Some of it's not so easy, depending on your marketing background. I think you could probably piece together all of the stuff that you would actually need to do just by reading the book. To me, it was pretty straightforward of, oh, okay, that makes perfect sense why you would do things a certain way. Then what I would say, the next step is absolutely starting your own podcast while you're building your followers, getting that podcast, getting Facebook Lives onto your page, and potentially also onto a YouTube channel. One thing that is interesting is that both Facebook pages and YouTube channels both allow you to monetize once you get to a certain number of likes. That kind of prestige allows you to have those numbers that you can then use for PR and publicity and those kinds of things. So you start to get that chicken and egg kind of a thing going. The background and the foundations that you start building with building an audience and saying, okay, well, I'm going to do a podcast once a week, and I'm going to do the video here, and then I'm going to submit it to iTunes, and then I'm going to submit it to iHeartRadio, and I'm going to submit to all these places. That helps drive traffic. And then you can drive traffic from Twitter, you can drive traffic from Instagram, you can drive traffic from LinkedIn to get people onto your podcasts to listen. So it's a process that you just kind of, you start in one corner and you're like, oh, okay, so I'm going to do a Facebook Live every week and record it. And then I'm going to turn that into I'm going to have the audio edited and turn it into a podcast and submit it to one platform. And then I'm going to do it to 2 platforms. And then I'm going to do it to a 3rd platform. And maybe the next step is, well, now I'm going to have it transcribed. So I've got the transcription and I've got the audio and the video. Oh, and I'm going to put that on my website. But then I'm going to use that to drive traffic back to the audio to get the numbers up. And it's just this one thing at a time. You don't do it all at once or you drive yourself nuts. Okay, I got the Facebook Live thing down. Okay, now I can do the podcast thing with my Facebook Live. Okay, now I can do the transcription thing.
So what do you recommend when you talk about editing?
Mm-hmm.
what do you recommend for that? I mean, do you go to a marketing person for that? Do you go to a video editor for that? Do you try to, do it yourself? I mean, so
It depends on your skills and how much you're making and what your desire for the outcomes is. So, you can easily go to Fiverr and pay somebody to put an intro and an outro on and not do any general editing in the middle, call it good. The next step is hiring somebody who's either a videographer or who does sound editing. I have somebody here locally who does that. I have a couple of other referrals also online who do that. And then you go to that's kind of like 2.0, depending on your budget. And the more you produce it, the more you mess with it, the more you do with it, the more the cost goes up, but the more professional it also tends to come out. Some people really like editing their own videos and editing their own audio, and they're really good with it. I personally suck, so I would have to hire somebody. So I put up a lot of raw videos.
So we're talking about, kind of like you said, there's no real recipe, but it sounds like there are definitely pieces that need to be monitored and tweaked. So it would really be helpful, I think, to have somebody with a marketing background to help analyze what you're doing and figure out what exactly you need to, what exactly do I need to monitor? Like, is it likes? Is it engagement? Is it click-throughs? Like
it depends on what you're trying to get at that particular point in time as to what results you're trying to get. And I know that may seem like weird, but it depends on what your outcome is that you're trying to achieve. Likes may be your ultimate goal if you're trying to get likes and views so that you have numbers to show to, this platform over here to say, hey, these are the numbers I'm getting.
And then, so with that kind of help, what does it look like to work with somebody then, because we're not a big shop. So I don't have, $100,000
right
marketing budget. So what does that look like for somebody like me?
Right. So you're going to probably need to split the budget up into small bite-sized chunks. And it doesn't need to be $100,000 advertising budget. And I would dare say, with being a small firm, that's not really an appropriate number to start with, right? And really the first thing to do is sit down with somebody who does strategy.
Okay.
And outline what your desired outcomes and your desired goals are.
Okay.
And then figure out a roadmap to get there, because not all outcomes are necessarily equal.
Right.
And, is your ultimate outcome to get more clients, or is it to get onto radio shows, or is it to do these guest speaking opportunities? What are your desired outcomes? What are you trying to do? And then that determines where you actually end up putting your money and your investment. Developing an advertising campaign just for the sake of doing an advertising campaign isn't going to yield results if we don't know what we're measuring or what we're trying to achieve.
Okay.
So it's why are we doing this? And what's the ultimate outcome that you're trying to achieve? And then working backwards and putting it together in steps and phases.
I like the working backwards. That makes sense to me.
And I think it ends up being a lot less expensive too, if we have that conversation of, okay, so I hear that you really want to do podcasts and you really want to get seen as is your goal really to be seen as one of the local experts, go-to experts? Okay, so how do we get you from here to there? But understanding what the goal is that in terms of number of clients? Is it in terms, how do you measure the actual, how do you measure success? Because there has to be some sort of way to actually measure the outcome to know if you've hit success.
Okay. That makes sense.
I mean, my engineering brain and my MBA brain says, okay, I'd want to know like what the end in mind is, Stephen Covey, but it's like the next thing, like when we start discussing performance improvement metrics for a business, right? Or metrics, performance metrics. What things are you trying to achieve? So how do we back into that? Because not every potential roadmap is going to get you there in the same way, but it depends on what exactly you're trying to achieve. And, I have to say that the one phrase that I took away from getting my MBA was, it depends. It really depends.
So so it's all about like, what is the point? What is the point of the podcast? Is the podcast to then get on to be on this show? And then what is the point of being on the show? Is it to get more clients? Is it to move on to something else? Is it, we work with a lot of businesses that are selling or, succession planning or things like that. And so, the question is, well, are they trying to get notoriety to get noticed to boost up their selling, price?
Right.
So that's a really good point as to maybe before we talk about, it's so funny because it's not just about marketing, it's about business planning. It's about figuring out what that end goal is and then using marketing as the tool to get there. Because you hear everybody talk about, you need more likes, you need more people following you on social media. And this whole conversation has made me rethink, because it's not just about getting more likes.
Mm-mm.
What is the goal behind it? Because maybe we don't need more likes, depending on what our goal is.
Right. You can't eat followers.
No.
Followers don't necessarily equate to clients, and they may not even equate to the types of clients you're looking for. And, if your goal is really okay, well, we get people in to do succession planning, but really my goal is to get more business, be able to manage more business sales because we get a percentage of the proceeds of the businesses that are sold, and that's 5 to 10%. Well, then it really makes more sense for us to be, doing certain activities, because certain activities are more likely to lead to that succession planning, getting the business ready for sale, and then, going through that eventual sale or exit strategy. Because how many new business owners really have a strong exit strategy in place?
I could tell you probably not very many. I can tell you that's one of the big pain points, I think, of a lot of business owners, is the lack of succession planning, the lack of leadership pipeline, the lack of, what am I going to do now that I've caught the, on the back end, but then also now I'm thinking on the front end too, people that break away and start their own firm, and I'm not talking about law now, business, you start their own business, and they're like the dog that catches the car. It's like, okay, well, what do I do now?
Right.
So that's very helpful to think. So you're thinking about the end goal and then working backwards. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that to me is always like part of like how I approach it, is that end goal and then working backwards and understanding that total lifetime value of a client.
Yes.
So it's not just about the fact that you got somebody to do a will or you got somebody to talk succession planning. Your goal is to really help work their way through that incorporation and then talk about, exit strategies and succession planning, and then, be with them all the way through and maybe even prepare the business for sale, because in talking to people, my understanding is that most businesses, you really need to prepare for 5 to 10 years before you sell it. So it's a process of getting the business ready to be sold so that you can maximize your revenue. And then you're going from there to the actual sales process, which can be full of legal minefields.
Yes, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And I mean, then the real question is, okay, so is that what you're trying to get? Well, then how do you get those clients who are in that beginning stage, who have the types of businesses that you want to be through the whole pipeline for? And are there particular industries that you specifically want to target? Because some may be more easy to sell, some may be more lucrative, some may be more easy to manage, some may have the types of personalities of people that you actually want to work with. It's not that you won't get other ones too, but if you're more specific about, hey, I work with, A, B, and C categories, because these are typically easy to sell businesses.
Yep. That gives a lot to think about. And I definitely, it's funny, the question that I started with is not the question that I'm ending with, but it's a good place. I started with, how do I get on this show? And now I'm thinking, no, how do I reach that person that I can help? So, so that's a better way to word that question, and better way to think about it. It's not just about notoriety. Not that it was ever really about notoriety, but it just makes you hone the question a lot more.
And, maybe the answer is, okay, I'm going to do weekly Facebook Lives. And then you're back into the thing, and into that circle. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's, I'm doing weekly Facebook Lives and I'm interviewing people. Or maybe it's, I am becoming a guest on a bajillion Facebook Lives and podcasts.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
This was a great opportunity. I want to pick your brain more.
We can chat offline.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me tonight. This has been a lot of fun, and I really appreciate it. And thank you for your willingness to, come up and be vulnerable and see how we can help.
Absolutely. Well, that's how we want our clients to be with us. So I have to exhibit some of that myself.
And you know what? And this is the perfect example of what I do. It's sometimes the answer is not even where we started.
Yes, I love that.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks.